The story begins in the wealthy city of Los Angeles,
Child.
where million-dollar mansions rise above the hills, shining like jewels in the California sun. Among those mansions stood the luxurious estate of Richard Wellington, a self-made millionaire known for his ruthless business mind, expensive taste, and cold personality. But inside all that gold, glass, and glamour was a hidden wound. Richard's only son, Ethan Wellington, was blind. Ethan was just 8 years old when doctors declared he would never see again. A rare disease had slowly taken his vision. The Wellington mansion had every luxury money could buy: golden chandeliers, marble floors, endless swimming pools. But for Ethan, it was all darkness. He lived in a world without colors, without light, without faces. His father, Richard, didn't know how to handle it. Instead of giving Ethan love and comfort, Richard drowned himself in work. He thought money could solve everything. He hired the best doctors, flew Ethan to Switzerland, London, New York, everywhere. But after years of treatments, nothing changed. Ethan was still blind. Slowly, Richard gave up. And Ethan? He learned to live in silence. But everything started to change the day a woman named Maya Brown entered their home. Maya wasn't from wealth. She was a single mother from the south side of Chicago. She had worked her whole life as a maid and caregiver, moving from house to house, often treated as invisible by the wealthy families she served. But Maya was different from anyone the Wellingtons had ever met. She walked into the mansion with confidence, her eyes warm, her hands gentle, and her voice carrying a kind of strength that Ethan immediately felt. Unlike everyone else, she didn't treat Ethan like he was broken. She didn't whisper when she passed him. She didn't pity him. Instead, she spoke directly to him. "Good morning, young man," she said on her first day, her voice cheerful and bold. Ethan froze. Nobody had greeted him like that before. He smiled shyly, his pale blue eyes staring into nothingness. "Good morning," he whispered back. From that day on, Maya became more than just a maid. She became Ethan's companion. She read to him, guided him through the garden, described the world with such detail that Ethan began to imagine colors and pictures in his mind. "Ethan, the roses today are burning red like fire," she would say. Or, "The sky is a soft blue blanket with tiny white clouds like cotton candy." Ethan laughed more with her than he ever had before. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible. He felt alive. But one night, something strange happened. Something that would change Ethan's life forever. It was late. The house was quiet. Ethan had woken from a nightmare, sweating and trembling. He stumbled into the hallway, his small hands tracing the wall. That's when he felt himself falling. His foot slipped on the marble stairs. Before he could tumble, strong arms grabbed him. It was Maya. She had heard him, crying in his room, and rushed to check. Holding him close, she whispered, "You're safe, baby. I got you." But as she touched his face to calm him, her thumbs brushed across his closed eyes. Ethan felt a warmth spread from her fingers, soothing, electric, almost magical. His eyes burned, not in pain, but with a sensation he had never felt before. "Maya, your hands, they feel different," Ethan whispered. Maya didn't think much of it. She rubbed his forehead gently, rocking him like her own child. But in that moment, something impossible had begun. That night, when Ethan closed his eyes to sleep for the first time in years, he dreamed in color. The next morning, Ethan couldn't explain it. He woke up and saw faint flashes of light, like tiny stars twinkling in the dark. He blinked again and again, unsure if it was real. "Maya," he said with trembling excitement, I think I saw something." Maya froze, her heart racing. She had no medical training, no science background. But deep down, she felt something unexplainable had happened when she touched him. And from that day forward, every time Maya rubbed Ethan's eyes, the lights grew stronger. The darkness was breaking. But here's the twist. Richard, the millionaire father, didn't believe Ethan. He thought it was just childish imagination. He dismissed Maya's touch as nonsense. In his eyes, she was just a maid, a woman hired to clean floors and cook meals, not someone who could possibly heal his son. But Ethan knew. He felt it. And Maya knew too. Something impossible had started. What was happening to Ethan? Could Maya really have a power that no doctor on earth could explain? And what would Richard do if he discovered the truth? The Wellington mansion sparkled like always. The staff moved quickly, polishing marble, trimming roses, serving meals on golden plates. But beneath the perfect image of wealth, something was happening that no one could see. Ethan's world of darkness was slowly changing. Every time Maya touched his eyes, he felt warmth, and then flashes. Sometimes green, sometimes yellow, sometimes the sparkle of silver like tiny fireworks in his mind. It was weak, blurry, but it was there. He wasn't imagining it. One afternoon, Maya guided Ethan into the garden. The smell of jasmine filled the air and the fountain trickled softly nearby. Ethan stopped suddenly, clutching her hand. "Maya," he whispered. "I see." Something white moving. Maya's heart skipped. She looked around. A white butterfly danced above the flowers. Ethan turned his head in the right direction, his blind eyes wide with excitement. "You saw that?" she asked, trembling. "Yes, it's small, like it's floating," Ethan said, smiling. Maya squeezed his hands, her eyes welling with tears. For the first time, Ethan wasn't just hearing the world, he was seeing pieces of it. But joy was short-lived. That evening during dinner, Ethan tried to tell his father. Richard sat at the long dining table, dressed in his sharp gray suit, scrolling through business reports on his iPad. "Dad," Ethan said carefully, "I saw something today." Richard barely looked up. "What do you mean, son?" "I saw a butterfly," Ethan said proudly. "White flying over the roses." The room went silent. The staff exchanged nervous glances. Maya froze, holding her breath. Richard finally looked up, his cold blue eyes narrowing. "Ethan, don't say things like that. We've been to the best doctors in the world. They said it's impossible." "But it happened," Ethan insisted. His voice cracked with hope. Richard sighed, pushing his chair back. He walked over, placing a heavy hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Son, you need to accept your condition. Don't live in fantasy." Ethan's smile faded. His tiny shoulders slumped. Maya wanted to scream at Richard. She wanted to tell him his son wasn't lying, that something real was happening. But she stayed quiet, swallowing her words. In this house, maids didn't argue with millionaires. But deep down, Maya knew Ethan's vision was coming back, and she wasn't going to let anyone crush his hope. Days turned into weeks. Richard buried himself in work, ignoring his son's strange claims. But when Richard wasn't around, Maya and Ethan shared a secret world. Every morning, Maya would gently rub Ethan's eyes. "Close them," she'd whisper. "Now tell me what you see." Sometimes he saw colors. Sometimes shapes. Once he gasped and shouted, "I saw your hand, Maya!" Just for a second. Maya smiled so wide her cheeks hurt. Each time she encouraged him more. But something else was happening. Ethan wasn't just seeing light. He was sensing emotions. "Maya," he said one day, "when you touch me, it feels warm inside. Not just here," he tapped his chest. "It feels like love." Maya's throat tightened. Tears filled her eyes, but she forced a smile. "That's because I do love you, baby. Like you're my own." And in truth, she did. Ethan had become like a son to her, filling the hole left by the struggles in her own life. But if Richard ever found out about these moments, there would be trouble. One stormy night, everything almost came crashing down. Richard returned early from a business trip, his shoes echoing in the empty halls. As he entered the library, he froze. There was Ethan sitting on the couch with Maya beside him. She was rubbing his eyes, whispering softly, and Ethan was laughing, bright, joyful, almost glowing. Richard's face darkened. "What is going on here?" Maya quickly pulled her hands back. Ethan panicked. "Dad, I was seeing things again. I saw colors. Maya was helping me." Richard's jaw clenched. His voice was sharp like a knife. "Enough of this nonsense. Maya, you are here to clean and cook, not to fill my son's head with lies." Maya tried to explain. "Sir, it's not lies, Enough!" Richard barked. His voice shook the walls. Ethan grabbed Maya's hand desperately. "Dad, please! It's real! She helps me see." Richard's cold eyes turned to his son, filled with something darker than anger. Fear. He couldn't accept what he couldn't control. "You are blind, Ethan," Richard said firmly. "That is the truth. Stop this foolishness before it breaks you." Ethan's chest heaved. His eyes watered. He felt crushed under the weight of his father's disbelief. Maya stared at Richard, her heart burning with anger. But she knew fighting him now would only make things worse. So, she stayed silent. But inside, she made a promise. She would never stop helping Ethan, no matter what Richard said. That night, when everyone else was asleep, Maya whispered to Ethan in his room, "Don't let anyone take your hope away, baby. Not even your father. If you believe, if you trust, you will see again." Ethan nodded, holding her hand tightly. "I believe in you, Maya. I trust you." And at that moment, the impossible felt closer than ever. Richard refuses to believe. Maya keeps the secret alive. And Ethan's visions are growing stronger by the day. But what happens when the truth becomes too big to hide? The days inside the Wellington mansion grew heavier with silence. Richard's harsh words had left Ethan brokenhearted. But Maya refused to let that silence win. Every morning before the house woke, she would sit with Ethan by the window. She rubbed his eyes gently, whispering, "Close them, baby. Tell me what you see." And every time Ethan described more. "The light is yellow today like the sun. I see green like leaves moving in the wind." Once he gasped, trembling with excitement. "Maya, I saw your smile. Just for a second. But I saw it." Maya's heart swelled. She held his hands tightly, whispering, "That's real, baby. That's real." But the more Ethan saw, the more dangerous it became to hide the truth. One afternoon, while Maya and Ethan were in the garden, Ethan suddenly froze. His blind eyes widened and he pointed shakily. "Maya, there's a man near the gate." "I see him." Maya turned quickly. Sure enough, a man in dark clothes lingered near the iron gates, staring at the mansion. Her stomach tightened. "Ethan, stay here," she said firmly, rushing him inside. When she told Richard about it later, he dismissed her instantly. "We have guards, cameras, alarms. Nobody can get in here." "You're overreacting." But Maya knew what she saw, and Ethan had seen it too. That meant something was happening outside the mansion, something Richard wasn't paying attention to. That night, while the storm rattled the windows, Ethan whispered from his bed, "Maya, I think seeing isn't the only thing changing." Maya leaned closer. "What do you mean, baby?" "When I close my eyes, I feel things. Like people's hearts." Maya frowned. "People's hearts?" "Yes," Ethan whispered. "When you're near me, I feel warm, safe, like sunshine. But when Dad comes in, I feel heavy, cold, like he's carrying a storm inside." Maya's eyes filled with tears. She stroked his hair gently. "You're special, Ethan. Maybe God gave you something no doctor could ever explain." Ethan nodded slowly. "But why me?" "Because you're meant for something greater," Maya whispered. Meanwhile, Richard noticed something strange, too. Ethan wasn't just happier around Maya, he was stronger. He walked with more confidence. He smiled more. But instead of being grateful, Richard grew suspicious. One evening, after a tense board meeting, he confronted Maya in the kitchen. "I don't know what you're doing with my son," he said coldly, his voice low. "But remember, you're an employee here." "Nothing more." "Don't fill his head with lies." Maya stood tall, her chin lifted. "With all due respect, sir, I'm not filling his head with lies. I'm giving him hope, something you stopped giving a long time ago." Richard's jaw tightened. His hand slammed the counter. "Hope doesn't cure blindness." Maya's voice softened, but her eyes burned with fire. "Maybe not, but love can do more than you think." Richard didn't reply. He stormed out, but her words haunted him long into the night. The following week, something extraordinary happened. Ethan woke in the middle of the night, his heart pounding. He stumbled toward Maya's quarters, his hands reaching. "Maya, Maya!" he shouted. She rushed to him, alarmed. "What is it, baby?" "I saw colors everywhere, bright like the whole world lit up. And then..." He paused, trembling. "I saw a shadow, a man in black. He was inside the house." Maya's blood ran cold. She pulled Ethan into her arms, whispering, "Shh, it was just a dream." But deep down, she knew it wasn't. Ethan wasn't just seeing, he was warning. The next morning, when the guards checked the cameras, they found something chilling. At exactly the time Ethan had woken, the security system showed a glitch. A dark figure moved through the shadows near the back of the estate. Richard brushed it off as a camera error. But Maya knew better. Ethan's visions were real. The mansion was no longer safe. Every creak in the hallways, every shadow outside the windows carried a sense of danger. Maya stayed close to Ethan, protecting him like a lioness guards her cub. But Richard refused to listen. His pride blinded him more than Ethan's eyes ever could. He was so determined to control everything, with money and logic, that he couldn't see the truth staring him in the face. And then one evening the truth walked right up to him. Ethan sat in the living room playing the piano by touch. Maya was beside him, humming softly. Suddenly Ethan stopped. His head lifted. "Dad," he said calmly, "there's someone in the house." "Right now," Richard frowned. "Don't be ridiculous, Ethan. The doors are locked." But before he could finish, one of the staff screamed from the hallway. The mansion alarm blared. A man in black had broken in. Guards rushed. Chaos erupted. Richard's face turned pale as he realized his son had seen it before it even happened. Ethan wasn't just getting his sight back. He was seeing beyond. Now Richard can't deny it anymore. Ethan's visions are real and dangerous. But who is the shadowy figure breaking into the mansion? And what does he want with the millionaire's blind son? The Wellington mansion, usually a place of silent wealth and polished perfection, now shook with chaos. The alarms blared, red lights flashing against the marble walls. Guards raced through the hallways, shouting. Somewhere in the shadows, a man in black slipped silently through the corridors like smoke. And in the center of it all, sat Ethan, clutching Maya's hand, his blind eyes wide but strangely calm. "Dad," Ethan whispered, "he's looking for me." Richard spun around, panic flashing in his eyes. "How do you know that?" "Because I feel it," Ethan said softly. "I can see him in my mind." Richard froze. The words he had ignored for weeks now echoed like thunder. Ethan wasn't just seeing shapes and colors. He was seeing things no one else could. The guards finally cornered the intruder near the west wing. A tall man in black clothes, his face hidden under a mask. He fought viciously, knocking 2 guards to the ground before they finally overpowered him. When they ripped the mask off, Richard's face went pale. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone who had once worked for him. "Marcus," Richard muttered, his voice tight. Marcus had been one of Richard's former employees, a man he had fired years ago for incompetence. But rumor had it, Marcus had begged Richard for help. Drowning in debt, Richard turned him away without a second thought. Now Marcus was back with rage in his eyes. "They don't know what you really are." "Wellington," Marcus hissed as guards dragged him away. "You think money makes you untouchable? You're wrong." Richard's jaw clenched, but he stayed silent. Yet Ethan heard the pounding in his father's chest. And for the first time he understood, Richard was afraid. After the chaos settled, Richard gathered the family and staff in the grand living room. His voice was cold, commanding. "This was just a desperate man," he said firmly. "Nothing more. Security will be doubled. That's the end of it." But Ethan shook his head. "No, Dad, that's not the end. He'll come back." "I saw it," Richard snapped. "Enough, Ethan! Stop with these stories!" The boy flinched, but Maya pulled him close. Her voice cut through the tension like steel. "He's not lying, sir. You saw it yourself tonight. He knew before anyone else. Why can't you accept that?" Richard glared at her. "Because it's impossible." Maya held his stare, her dark eyes unflinching. "Sometimes the impossible is the truth." That night, long after Richard stormed out, Ethan asked the question that had been burning in his heart. "Maya, why do your hands make me see?" "Why you?" Maya froze. She had kept her secret buried for years, but Ethan's innocent voice forced it to the surface. She sat down on his bed, her eyes heavy with memories. "Because, baby, once a long time ago, I was just like you." Ethan gasped. "You were blind?" Maya nodded slowly. "When I was a little girl, I lost my sight in an accident. Doctor said I'd never see again. My mama, she prayed over me every single night. She would rub my eyes just like I do with you, whispering that God's light would find me again. One night, it did. I opened my eyes and I could see. No science, no medicine, just love and faith." Ethan's mouth fell open. "So that's why, when you touch me—" "Yes," Maya whispered, her voice trembling. "Maybe the gift passed through me to you. I don't know why, baby. But I know it's real, and it's powerful." Tears streamed down Ethan's face. "Then maybe I can really see again?" Maya kissed his forehead gently. "You already are." The next morning, Richard found Maya in the kitchen. His voice was sharp, almost accusing. "Why is my son clinging to you more than to me? What are you telling him?" Maya turned slowly. The truth. That he's seeing again. That he has a gift. Richard's face darkened. You're filling his head with false hope. I won't allow it. Maya took a deep breath. Richard, when was the last time you looked at your son as a father? Not a problem to fix? You keep hiding behind money, but what he needs is you. Her words hit him harder than he expected. Richard opened his mouth to argue, but for once no words came. Because deep down he knew she was right. But as the mansion tried to return to normal, something darker loomed. Marcus, the intruder, hadn't acted alone. The way he spoke, the hatred in his voice, it hinted at something bigger. And Ethan could feel it. One afternoon, while Maya guided him through the halls, Ethan stopped suddenly. His small body stiffened. Maya, he whispered, more men are coming. Not just Marcus. I can feel them. They want Dad's money and me. Maya's heart pounded. She believed him. Every vision he'd had so far had come true. And she knew then Ethan wasn't just in danger. The whole mansion was. That night, thunder cracked across the sky. Maya stood at Ethan's window, watching the storm roll in. She whispered a prayer, clutching her cross necklace tightly. Lord, give me the strength to protect this boy. If you gave me this gift for a reason, let me use it now. Behind her, Ethan stirred in his bed. His blind eyes opened, glowing faintly with a light Maya had never seen before. Maya, he whispered, they're almost here. And for the first time, Maya realized this wasn't just about healing. Ethan's gift was becoming something far greater. Maya's past is revealed. Ethan's powers are growing, and danger is closing in on the Wellington mansion. But will Richard finally believe before it's too late? The Wellington mansion sat under a heavy sky, the storm clouds pressing low as if the heavens themselves were holding their breath. Inside, tension hung thicker than the marble walls. Every guard was doubled, every door locked, every camera monitored. But Maya knew it wasn't enough, because Ethan had already seen it. They're coming, he whispered that afternoon, clutching her hand. Not just one man, a group. And they're angry. Maya swallowed hard. When, baby? Ethan shook his head slowly. Soon at night. She tightened her grip on him. Then we'll be ready. That evening, Richard sat alone in his study, the glow of his laptop casting shadows across his face. He tried to bury himself in contracts and deals, but his mind kept drifting back to Ethan's words. They're coming, a group. He wanted to dismiss it as childish fantasy. But after the break-in, after Marcus's threats, doubt gnawed at him. And for the first time, Richard felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Fear. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, staring out at the storm. For all his wealth and power, he realized how fragile it all was. One boy, his only son, was more valuable than everything he owned. And yet, he barely knew how to protect him. That night it happened. The power cut out first. The chandeliers went dark. The security monitors flickered, and the mansion plunged into silence. Then came the sound of glass shattering. Boots crunching against marble, voices whispering in the halls. They were inside. Stay close to me, baby, Maya whispered, pulling Ethan behind her. Her heart raced, but her voice was steady. Ethan gripped her tightly. Maya, there are 5 of them. I can feel it. 5 men, armed, angry, and moving with purpose. They weren't just here to rob, they were here to send a message. Richard stormed out of his study, shouting orders. Guards, secure the house! But within minutes, the guards were overpowered. The intruders moved like wolves, coordinated, merciless. Richard's chest heaved. For the first time, money couldn't save him. Then he heard it. Ethan's voice, calm but urgent. Dad, they're in the West Wing! 2 are coming your way, hide! Richard froze. His son couldn't see, and yet, he was right. A second later, 2 masked men charged down the hallway. Richard ducked just in time, saved only by Ethan's warning. For the first time in his life, Richard believed. Chaos erupted. Shots rang out. The mansion echoed with shouts and the clash of bodies. Maya held Ethan close, her heart pounding. Then one of the intruders found them, a tall man with cold eyes and a knife in his hand. He stepped into Ethan's room, grinning wickedly. Well. The blind little rich boy. Maya shielded Ethan, her voice fierce. You won't touch him. The man laughed. Move, Maid. You're nothing. But before Maya could respond, Ethan's voice cut through the air, calm, steady, almost commanding. I see you. The intruder froze. Ethan's blind eyes were glowing faintly in the darkness. "I see your anger," Ethan whispered. "I see your pain. You lost someone, didn't you?" The man's face twisted, shock flashing in his eyes. His grip on the knife faltered. How could you know that?" Ethan's voice grew stronger. "You don't want to do this. You don't want to hurt me. You're scared." The intruder trembled, his knife clattering to the floor. For a moment, it was as if Ethan's words reached into his soul and pulled out the truth. Maya stared in awe. Her boy wasn't just seeing, he was healing. Meanwhile, Richard fought off another attacker in the hall, his body shaking from adrenaline. He was no fighter, but something inside him had awakened. His son's voice, guiding him, gave him strength he didn't know he had. "Dad, behind you!" Ethan's voice echoed from down the hall. Richard spun just in time, disarming the man with a desperate swing of a lamp. His heart pounded, but for the first time, he wasn't thinking about business or money. He was thinking about Ethan, protecting him. After what felt like hours, the intruders were finally subdued. The guards managed to regain control, dragging the men out into the storm. The mansion was safe for now. But inside Ethan's room, the true battle was still unfolding. Ethan sat on the bed, trembling, his eyes glowing faintly. Maya knelt in front of him, holding his hands. "You were amazing, baby," she whispered. "You saved us." Ethan shook his head. "Maya, I felt their pain. All of them. They were angry because of Dad. They hate him. And it's not over." Richard stood in the doorway, silent. He looked at his son, really looked at him for the first time in years. He saw not weakness, not a disability, but strength. Something greater than anything he could understand. Slowly, Richard stepped into the room. His voice cracked as he spoke. "Ethan, I believe you." The boy turned his glowing eyes toward his father, a tear sliding down his cheek. "It's about time, Dad." Maya smiled softly, her heart swelling. For the first time, Richard and Ethan weren't divided by silence or disbelief. They were united by truth. But the danger wasn't gone. Ethan knew it. Maya knew it. And deep down, Richard knew it too. The mansion has survived the first attack. But Ethan's gift has only just awakened. Who sent the intruders? What secret is Richard hiding that has drawn so much hate? The Wellington mansion was quiet again. Too quiet. The storm had passed, the intruders were gone, and yet the walls seemed to hold on to the echoes of the night, the alarms, the shouts, the fear. But inside Ethan's heart, something else lingered, the pain of the men who had come. He had felt it, their anger and their brokenness, and now questions haunted him. "Dad," Ethan whispered the next morning at breakfast, "why do they hate you so much?" Richard froze. His fork clinked against the porcelain plate. For a long moment, he said nothing. Maya, sitting beside Ethan, watched Richard carefully. His face was pale, his jaw tight. Finally, he set his fork down and leaned back, sighing heavily. "Because I made mistakes," Richard admitted quietly. Ethan tilted his head. "What kind of mistakes?" Richard's eyes flickered with shame. "The kind that money can't cover up." Later that day, Richard called Maya into his study. For once, there was no anger in his voice, only exhaustion. "You were right," he admitted. "I haven't been a father. I buried myself in money and power, thinking it could solve everything. But Ethan, he sees through me. Literally." Maya folded her arms. "He doesn't just see through you, sir. He feels what's in your heart, and it scares him." Richard looked down at his desk, ashamed. "When I built my empire, I crushed people, businesses, families. I thought it was just the price of success. But Marcus, those intruders, they're proof the past doesn't stay buried." Maya's eyes softened, though her voice was firm. "Then maybe it's time you stop hiding behind your empire and start being a father. Ethan doesn't need a millionaire. He needs a man who'll stand by him." Richard nodded slowly, the weight of her words sinking in. That night, Ethan had another vision. He woke in a sweat, clutching his chest. His blind eyes glowed faintly in the moonlight. Maya rushed to his side, holding his trembling hands. "What is it, baby?" Ethan's voice shook. "I saw fire. I saw our house burning, and I saw you, Maya. You were crying." Maya's heart clenched. She stroked his hair, whispering, "Shh, baby. You're safe. Nothing will happen." But deep down, fear gripped her, because every vision Ethan had came true. The next day, Richard tried something he hadn't done in years. He spent time with his son, He led Ethan into the garden, his hand resting gently on the boy's shoulder. "Do you remember when you were little, before you lost your sight?" Richard asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. "I remember colors. A little bit, and your voice reading to me at night." Richard swallowed hard. "I stopped reading to you, didn't I?" "Yes," Ethan said simply. Richard knelt beside him, tears glistening in his eyes. "I'm sorry, son. I thought fixing you with doctors and money was enough. But I forgot the most important thing. You just needed your dad." Ethan reached out, touching his father's face with small, trembling hands. "I forgive you, Dad, but I think God gave me this gift for a reason. Maybe to change you too." Richard's chest tightened. He pulled Ethan into his arms, holding him as if he might disappear. For the first time in years, he truly felt like a father. But peace didn't last. 2 days later, a letter arrived at the mansion. No name, no return address, just a single sheet of paper. On it were 5 words written in bold black ink. "This is not over, Wellington." Richard's blood ran cold. Maya read it over his shoulder, her voice steady. "They're not finished. They'll come back." Ethan, standing in the doorway, whispered, "I know. I can feel them watching." That night, the nightmare came true. Ethan woke to the smell of smoke. His eyes flew open, glowing faintly in the darkness. He coughed, choking. "Maya, fire!" Maya rushed in, scooping him into her arms. Flames licked the curtains. Smoke filled the halls. Somewhere in the distance, guards shouted, but the fire spread too fast. "Dad!" Ethan screamed. Richard appeared through the smoke, coughing. His suit jacket charred at the edges. He grabbed Ethan's other hand, his face pale with fear. "Stay with me, son. We'll get out!" But as they stumbled through the halls, Ethan froze. His small body went rigid, his voice trembling. "Maya, Dad, they didn't just set the fire. They're inside. Again." Maya's heart dropped. The fire wasn't an accident. It was an attack. Through the smoke, shadows moved. Men in black, armed, ruthless. One of them shouted, "Grab the boy!" Richard pulled Ethan close, fury burning in his eyes. "Over my dead body!" Maya stood in front of them, her arms outstretched. "You'll have to go through me first." The men hesitated for just a second. And in that second, Ethan spoke. His voice rang out clear and powerful, stronger than ever before. "I see you. I see your hate, your pain, but you can't take me, because I am not afraid of you anymore." For a moment, the intruders faltered, shaken by the boy's words. It was as if his glowing eyes pierced straight into their souls. Richard realized something then. His son wasn't weak. He wasn't broken. He was the strongest person in the room. The family barely escaped the fire that night. The mansion burned, the flames lighting up the California hills like a beacon. By the time firefighters arrived, the grand estate was reduced to ruins. Richard stood in the ashes, holding Ethan in his arms, Maya at his side. For once, he didn't care about the house, the cars, the empire. He only cared about them. But even as the smoke cleared, one truth remained. The people who came for Ethan weren't done. And the gift inside Ethan was still growing. The mansion is gone, but the danger isn't. Ethan's visions grow stronger, and the enemies grow bolder. What secret is powerful enough to burn a millionaire's empire to the ground? The once golden Wellington mansion was gone. All that remained were blackened walls, twisted beams, and the smell of smoke hanging heavy in the air. Reporters swarmed the gates, flashing cameras, shouting questions. But Richard ignored them. For the first time in his life, wealth, reputation, and power meant nothing. All he had left was Ethan and Maya. The 3 of them stood together watching firefighters hose down the last flames. Ethan clung to Maya's hand, his glowing eyes hidden behind dark glasses to protect him from curious stares. Richard stood close, his hand on his son's shoulder. For the first time in years, he wasn't thinking like a businessman. He was thinking like a father. But beneath the ashes, secrets were stirring. Later that night, in a safe house Richard had arranged, Maya found him sitting alone by the window. His usual armor, confidence, arrogance, control, was gone. He looked smaller somehow, older. "You're quiet," Maya said softly. Richard sighed. "I've spent my whole life building an empire, and in one night it all burned. I should be angry, but all I feel is shame." Maya tilted her head. "Shame?" "Yes." Richard's voice cracked. "Because this is my fault. The people who came after us, They're from my past. Men I destroyed to get where I am. I told myself it was just business. But business ruined lives, families, and now they've come for my family. Maya was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "Maybe this is your chance to make it right." Richard looked at her sharply. "And how do I do that?" "Start by being honest with Ethan." The next morning, Richard sat beside his son. Ethan's small hands traced the edge of his father's suit sleeve. Sensing his unease, "Dad," Ethan whispered, "you're scared." Richard closed his eyes. His son's words cut deeper than any knife. "Yes, son, I am, and you need to know why." So Richard told him everything. About the men he had fired without mercy, the families he had bankrupted, the desperate employees he had turned away when they needed help. He confessed how Marcus and the intruders were all victims of his hunger for power. Tears welled in Ethan's sightless eyes. "Dad, why?" Richard's voice broke. "Because I thought being strong meant never being soft. I thought money made me powerful, but it just made me blind." Ethan reached out, touching his father's face gently. "Then maybe God made me blind, so I could teach you how to see." Richard's heart shattered. He pulled Ethan into his arms, sobbing quietly. Maya stood in the doorway, tears streaming down her own cheeks. But the danger wasn't over. Ethan's visions were becoming more powerful and more specific. That afternoon, as Maya tucked him into bed, Ethan suddenly stiffened. His glowing eyes widened. "Maya, I see a place. Not here. Somewhere cold. A warehouse with broken windows. That's where they're hiding. The men who want us." Maya leaned closer. "Are you sure, baby?" "Yes," Ethan whispered. "And they're planning something bigger. They want Dad to suffer. They want me." Maya's stomach tightened. She believed him. Every vision had come true. This one would too. Richard called in private security teams, men with guns and armored cars. But Maya wasn't convinced that would be enough. "Sir," she said firmly, "you can't fight this with muscle and money. They'll keep coming. What they want isn't just revenge. They want to break you." Richard clenched his jaw. "Then let them come." "I won't let them touch my son again." Maya shook her head. "It's not about letting them come. It's about facing what you did, owning it. Until you do, they won't stop." Richard fell silent. Her words were a mirror he didn't want to look into. That night, Ethan had another vision. This one stronger, clearer, terrifying. He saw himself in the warehouse, surrounded by men in black. He saw Maya crying, holding his hand. He saw his father on his knees, begging, and then he saw a blinding light, brighter than fire, exploding from within himself. When he woke, he gasped for air, clutching his chest. Maya rushed to his side. "Maya, it's coming." The final moment. And when it does, something impossible will happen. Maya stroked his hair, whispering, "Whatever happens, baby, I'll be right there." Meanwhile, Richard stared at himself in the mirror. For the first time, he didn't see a powerful man. He saw a broken one. He whispered to his own reflection, "Ethan, Maya, I don't deserve you, but I swear I'll protect you." And for the first time in his life, Richard Wellington prayed. The next day, news broke on television. A warehouse on the outskirts of the city had caught fire during a police raid. Inside, they found weapons, stolen money, and plans for something bigger, something targeting Richard Wellington and his family. Ethan sat in front of the TV, his face calm. "That's the place I saw," he said quietly. "But it's not over. They're still out there, waiting." Maya's chest tightened. She believed him. Richard turned off the TV and knelt in front of his son. His voice was steady, determined. "Then we face them together. No more secrets. No more lies. We'll fight this, as a family." For the first time, the three of them, Millionaire, Maid, and Blind Boy, were united. Not by wealth, not by fear, but by love. And yet, deep down, they all knew the storm wasn't over. The final battle was still coming. Richard's sins have been revealed. Ethan's visions grow stronger, and the enemies are preparing for one last strike. But what is the impossible destiny waiting for the millionaire's blind son? The safe house was quiet that night. Too quiet. Maya sat awake in the living room, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea gone cold. She couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying Ethan's words. Something impossible will happen. In the next room, Ethan lay curled under the blankets, his blind eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. He wasn't awake, but he wasn't truly asleep either. His body twitched with visions too heavy for a child to carry. And Richard? He stood at the window, staring into the darkness. His empire was gone, his reputation in ruins. But for the first time in his life, he didn't care. The only thing that mattered was keeping his son alive. Then, the sound came. A car engine. Then another. Then more. Headlights cut through the trees, flooding the safe house with beams of light. "They found us," Richard muttered. Maya's chest tightened. "What do we do?" Richard turned, his face hard. "We protect him, no matter what." The front door burst open with a deafening crash. Armed men stormed inside, dressed in black, their boots pounding against the floorboards. "Grab the boy!" one of them shouted. Maya rushed into Ethan's room, scooping him into her arms. "Hold on to me, baby," she cried. Ethan clutched her tightly, his small body trembling. "It's happening, Maya. This is the vision." "The last one," Richard appeared, grabbing a fire poker from the fireplace. For a man who once lived behind guards and gates, he fought like a father possessed. He swung, striking one of the intruders to the ground. But more came, too many. One of them raised a gun, aiming straight at Richard. "Dad!" Ethan screamed. And then it happened. A blinding light exploded from Ethan's body, bursting out like a wave of pure energy. The room shook, glass shattered, men stumbled back, covering their eyes. Maya fell to her knees, shielding Ethan but refusing to let go. She could feel the power radiating from him, warm, fierce, alive. Richard froze, staring in awe. For the first time, he saw his son not as fragile, but as chosen. The intruders screamed, dropping their weapons, blinded not by bullets, but by the truth shining into their souls. They stumbled back, some weeping, some collapsing to their knees. It was as if Ethan's light was pulling the darkness out of them. And then, silence. The light faded. Ethan collapsed into Maya's arms, breathing heavily. His glowing eyes dimmed back into blindness. "Maya," he whispered weakly. "Did I stop them?" Tears streamed down her face. "Yes, baby, you did. You saved us." Richard knelt beside them, his hands trembling as he touched his son's shoulder. "No, son, you saved me." When the police arrived minutes later, they found the intruders broken, not by violence, but by something they couldn't explain. Some were sobbing. Others whispered apologies. None could look Ethan in the face. The world would never know what truly happened inside that safe house. But Richard, Maya, and Ethan knew. A miracle had occurred. Days later, Richard stood before a press conference. Cameras flashed. Reporters leaned forward, hungry for a story. But this time, Richard wasn't there to boast about profits or power. "I stand before you not as a businessman," he said, his voice steady, "but as a father who has failed and who has been given a second chance. I built an empire on greed. I destroyed lives, and my past nearly destroyed my family. But today, I make a promise. I will spend the rest of my life repairing the harm I've done. Not with money, but with truth." The room was silent. For the first time, Richard Wellington wasn't feared. He was human. Back at home, what little home they had left, Ethan sat with Maya on the porch of a small cottage Richard had bought for them. No guards, no gates, just trees, sky, and peace. "Maya," Ethan whispered, "do you think I'll ever see again?" Maya smiled, brushing his hair back. "Baby, you already see more than anyone I've ever known." Ethan chuckled softly. "You always say that." "Because it's true," she replied. Richard joined them, sitting on the other side of his son. For the first time, the three of them felt like a family. Not perfect, not wealthy, not without scars, but real. That night, as stars filled the sky, Ethan lay in bed between Maya and his father. His voice was soft but full, of peace. "Dad." "Yes, son?" "Do you think God made me blind so I could help you see?" Richard's throat tightened. He kissed Ethan's forehead, whispering, "Yes, and you did, better than anyone ever could." Maya held Ethan's hand, whispering a prayer of thanks. And for the first time since Ethan's blindness, since the mansion, since the fire and the fear, there was peace. Because sometimes, the impossible isn't about sight, it's about love. And that's the story of Ethan, the blind son of a millionaire, and Maya, the maid who became more than family. A story of power, pain, redemption, and a miracle no one could explain. If this story touched you, share it. Let others see that even in darkness, light can break through.